will be resolved.
And joining us now, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. He's on the Armed Services Committee. Senator Graham, thanks very much for coming in. It didn't look like there was a great rapport there between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel today when they sat in the Oval Office. What was your assessment?
That's why they pay you the big bucks. It was pretty bad.
Why?
Well, you know, put yourself in the Prime Minister of Israel's shoes. You're coming to speak to the Congress. President Obama, I think, has this mindset that if I publicly scold Israel or I push them on settlements and borders, I somehow get street credibility in the Arab world or with the Palestinian people. It doesn't work. It just makes our relationship with Israel more difficult. And it was overall a good speech, but why in the world you would insist on 67 borders under these conditions, I don't know.
Well, he also had a caveat, an important caveat.
Land swap.
With mutually agreed swaps, land swaps.
Here's the problem. When you talk about settlements, everybody in the region will highlight Israel's problem with settlements. When you talk about borders and not giving up the right to return, it's one thing to change the borders. Well, the Palestinian people insist on the right to return, which is a way of destroying the Israeli state. Look at it from an American point of view. We're providing $200 million a year in aid to the Palestinian people. Some of that aid is done at great things in the West Bank. Ramallah is a different town. But Hamas is now in a coalition government with the Palestinian Authority. Why should an American politician give aid to the Palestinian coalition government until they publicly say, we acknowledge the state of Israel as a Jewish state has the right to exist? I'm not going to vote for any more aid to the Palestinian people until this new coalition government acknowledges that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state.
Do you see any chance that Hamas will change its attitude and formally acknowledge Israel's right to exist?
Why? If they don't, I've never seen it any more screwed up than it is today. Why would you negotiate with someone who has as their ultimate goal your demise? President Abbas and Prime Minister Fayyad are good agents of peace. Hamas is a terrorist organization. For some reason, they've come back together, and our government, we're broke. Why would you fund a partial group of people who want to destroy your best ally? The only way I see peace coming about is for both sides to acknowledge the other's right to exist. Every politician in Israel, right, middle, left, acknowledges the Palestinian people have a proper, legitimate desire to have an independent state where they control their destiny.
President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority President, Prime Minister Fayyad, as you point out, they say they'll resume the peace negotiations with Israel if Israel freezes its settlement activity.
No, forget about, we can come up with capitals, we can deal with settlements, we can deal with boundary lines. All these are details, but the one thing you've got to get out of the way is it the agenda of Hamas and part of the Palestinian people to destroy the state of Israel. Until that's off the table, everything else makes no sense to me. Why would you negotiate borders if the people on the other side of the border have as their ultimate goal to destroy you? So if I'm Israel, if I'm the American taxpayer, I don't provide any more aid, I don't negotiate until you will tell me to my face as a joint statement of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, you don't want to kill me.
Because President Abbas says even if Hamas is part of his government, he speaks for the Palestinians and he supports a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living alongside each other. I want the
entire what would the Palestinians say if Likud said, okay, we agree that Palestinian people have a right to an independent state, but the major party in Israel said, we don't agree. Would you negotiate with a divided government, a house divided? The Palestinian people have to decide among themselves which way they want to go. And if Hamas is going to be part of the coalition government, if I were Israel, I would not enter into peace negotiations until Hamas changed their charter and acknowledged that I have a place on the planet as a Jewish state. You're wasting your time, and we're wasting our money until that is taken care of.
And you think, are you going to introduce legislation to cut off aid to the Palestinians, or what's going to happen?
Well, you know, we're broke. I got to go to South Carolina and say, here's why I'm giving money to the Palestinian people. I think the aid we provided to the Palestinian Authority has been well spent. Ramallah is a different place. Their security forces in the West Bank are getting better by the day, but Hamas has been in control of the Gaza Strip. They've done nothing but shell Israel. They will not acknowledge the right of the Jewish people to exist as a nation, a Jewish state. So I don't think we need to move any further in the peace process, and we don't need to provide any more aid until we get that issue dealt with.
What did you think of what President Obama said yesterday and today on Syria?
Good. That's why I like the speech. You know, Assad needs to get with the program or go. The president did a good job of explaining the Arab Spring. Now is the time for a broke nation like the United States to invest in this new election in Egypt. Every 6,000 years, you get a chance at democracy in Egypt. When you look at it, this is the first time in 6,000 years Egypt has moved toward democracy. If Egypt will adopt democratic principles, the rule of law, tolerance, a role for women, it changes the Arab world. So to President Obama, I will help you provide aid to Egypt. Tunisia, I will help you keep troops in Iraq if that's the best way to secure Iraq. I will help stand by you to make sure we get it right in Afghanistan. But when it comes to Israel and the Palestinian problem, Mr. President, you're doing a lot of damage to the process by singling out individual issues like the settlement and borders. I don't think the president quite understands that the Israeli people are more uncomfortable than any time that I've been going to Israel. The Israeli people and their political leaders really question whether or not this new coalition government could ever deliver, and I understand why they questioned that.
Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
At that meeting with the Prime